I don't want to repeat stuff that Brian's already told you, but let me point out a couple of terrain features to you, then we can walk across the field. Did Brian talk to you about why Lee decides to attack the center on July 3rd? Yeah, but and then based on the fighting on July the 2nd, Meade has this notion, or Lee has the notion that the center is the weak point. Okay.
And Meade then thinks they're going to attack the center.
Right. He has the Council of War, and he tells Gibbon if the enemy is going to attack tomorrow, it's going to be on your front. Okay. So the plan for Pickett's charge is artillery, infantry, and cavalry. Did he get into how they're to cooperate together?
No.
Okay, go. The Confederate infantry, artillery, and cavalry is all going to be employed on July 3rd. I work here in the summertime from 2002 to 2009. I was one of the seasonal rangers here, and we did these tours on Pickett's charge all the time. And almost everybody, 90% of the people I talk to, always stand here or on the Union side, and they say, "What a dumb idea." Right? What a stupid idea. Which, you know, we can go and have that debate in a variety of different ways, but I always sort of argue that Lee puts together a pretty daggone good plan on July the 3rd. Whether or not it works is a different question, but was the plan good? Does it work? Those are two different arguments. But what he puts together on July 3rd is a cannonade that's going to consist of about 180 guns, and you can see some of the positioning of them right here off to my left. A huge artillery line, about 180 guns, to concentrate their fire on the Union Center. And when we talk about the Union Center, you've probably heard of the copse of trees. That's the group of trees. Y'all find that Meade statue again? The angle's that lone tree. The copse of trees is the one off to the right of that yet. That copse of trees would have been visible to the Confederates on July the 3rd, so that's sort of what they're focusing in on. But in reality, they're going to break a front that's about a quarter of a mile, and some Confederates will end up hitting the Union line as far down as the Cadore Farm, which is the red barn with the 3 white prongs on it, and then even a little bit closer off to the right down to the PA Memorial. And I'll tell you why in a second. But this is where the artillery fires to converge at on July 3rd. So we got about 180 guns all along Seminary Ridge that's to weaken the Union Center. And Confederate artillery, mostly, at least for the Virginians, under the command of Colonel E.P. Alexander. Alexander is General Longstreet, James Longstreet's artillery officer, and he's going to be directing E.P. Alexander all the guns on the Virginia side, which is the side that we're going to be on. So the artillery bombardment's supposed to start at 1. Now, General Lee never gives orders precisely as to how long the artillery bombardment is to last, but in his sort of assumption, and E.P. Alexander echoes this, he says about 30 minutes. He's got a 30-minute time frame for artillery bombardment. And what do you think is going to happen after the 30 minutes? What's the problem the artillerymen are going to face? Come 45 minutes, an hour.
Union artillery is going to be firing back.
Union artillery is going to be firing back, and if Union artillery is firing back, you got to keep firing. So in time, you're going to do what? You're going to run out of ammunition. Okay. So E.P. Alexander is the one that says in his post-war account, he says, I was planning on 30 minutes because I don't have enough ammunition. They've already fought for 2 days. Supplies, logistics in Pennsylvania is very complicated for the Confederate Army. So they're planning on 30 minutes. And what happens? The cannonade starts at 1 o'clock and it goes until about 3. It goes for 2 hours. In short, the Confederate artillery has a problem of not being able to hit their target. This is sort of consistent for Confederate artillery because of the difficulty in the fusing and the lack of training. So the 180-some guns that's sitting up here on the ridge line firing to the Union Center, initially their shots are on target and they're hailing down on the Union Army 2nd Corps in the center of the Union line. But in time they start to overshoot. And you'll read accounts from Union soldiers on Cemetery Ridge, and they're laying to the ground, and they say all the shots just kept passing overhead. When you think, well, surely someone can see and correct this error. Why do they keep overshooting? But can they see?
Not over there.
You got 180 guns here. The Union returns fire with about 80, so let's say about 250, 260. The July 3rd weather is about 88 degrees. It's humid, so all that smoke's gonna cling. So the Confederate artillery has no way of knowing that they're this ineffective. So they begin to fire until about 3 o'clock. And actually what happens is that the Union artillery near the center of the Union line, they're starting to run low on ammunition too. And their commander, General Henry Hunt, will give them an order to slacken their fire. And once the Union guns start to slacken their fire, what do you think the Confederates think?
They're out of ammunition.
They're out of ammunition, so the time is now for the infantry. So about 3 o'clock, the infantry will start to assemble. So you have the Confederate artillery on the crest of the ridge, and the infantry is to the back. They would be laying in the wood lines that we all drove down on Seminary Ridge, and during this cannonade for 2 hours. Okay. I think Brian told you there's about 13,000 Confederate infantry in 3 different divisions. George Pickett, James Pettigrew, and Isaac Trimble. We're going to be following the path of the Virginians, and George Pickett's men, his division of General Longstreet's corps is about 5,600 men. He's holding all the ground from the Virginia Memorial, where we're at, down south. And if you look, you might have to kind of move out either way. But did you all stop at that Longstreet observation tower yesterday by chance, or did you drive by it?
No.
Okay. Follow the Seminary Ridge tree line and find the top quarter of that iron observation tower.
Yeah.
Did y'all see that sticking out of the tree line?
Yeah. Yeah, I see it.
Or find the red barn right in our front, that you can see the slope of the roof, and then look to the right, say about 1 o'clock on the face of a clock, and you'll find the top of that observation tower. Y'all see that?
Oh, yeah.
From here to there.
It's about half a mile from here to there.
And
So,
how far is it to the seminary then? You got Lee over there and you got Longstreet over here, right?
well, Lee's actually going to be here. This is called the Point of Woods on
Okay.
July the 3rd. He's going to make his sort of command here at the Point of Woods. But imagine the Virginia Memorial is midway to this infantry line. You got half a mile, and look at that ground, or at least the distance, the whole way down to the Longstreet Observation Tower, half a mile. That mass is with Pickett's division of 5,600 men. Okay? Now, just flip that on this side for another half a mile and follow the tree line up. Y'all stopped at the North Carolina Memorial. And look off into the distance to where you see a group of trees that are running towards Cemetery Ridge. And do you all see the top lights of the baseball stadium
Yeah.
and the rec park?
Yeah.
That would be about the left flank of the infantry. So that gives you an idea of the mile, from about where the rec park stadium lights are, kind of here to the center, and then down to the observation tower. Now, for the Virginians holding all that ground down there, it's going to be James Kemper's men who will be on the far right. They're not marching straight across, right? Really, the only Confederates who march straight across is in this area, and then kind of up a little bit more towards the North Carolina monument. But everyone else is marching like this, right? Because if you're the whole way down at the observation tower, you're going to oblique,
Like
march
a
at
wedge?
a 45-degree angle to come in and attack the Union Center. That make sense?
You're like a wedge formation, kind of.
It would be like a wedge formation once you step off. So keep that in mind. And let me show you one other thing. Catty corner to me, you can see the round tops. Okay, big round top is the one that's covered in trees, the White House in the front. To the left of that, you can see the summit of Little Round Top. There are 6 artillery guns left over from day 2 up on Little Round Top. So the Virginians, the whole way down there near the observation tower, as they start to oblique to try to pierce the Union Center, the guns on Little Round Top open fire, and they start to fire on their sides. So the Confederates coming across obliquing take fire to the front, as do all the other units on the line, but the Virginians get it worse because they're obliquing. So they're taking fire on their right side too. And then that creates all sorts of complications with mass and cluster of the infantry. When the infantry steps off, we call this Pickett's charge, right? A lot of people think, well, they're really charging. I said, you try to run a mile with a rifle with 13,000 other men.
And we'll close.
And then engage the enemy. They're marching at common time. Common time's 90 steps a minute, so it's a very slow, methodical pace because that helps them keep their formation. When the Confederate infantry step out, the artillery stops firing. Confederate artillery will stop firing. They don't have any ammunition left. So the infantry steps out, and immediately once they do, they come under the Union attack again, the Union artillery fire. when they get up to the Emmitsburg Road and we can stop there, it's about from that point that the Confederate infantry will actually engage, because they're then within rifle distance of 300 yards.
How long are they under cover from all the smoke and everything? I mean, are they covered with that a little while before they're seen?
A little while. Once their guns stop firing, that starts to sort of open the valley up. And then once the Union begins to fire, that sort of creates a little bit more smoke again. But it's not that they're marching the whole time under smoke, because it's gonna start to dissipate once the Confederate artillery is silent. Do you have any other questions?
These cannons out here, where do they come from? They're not authentic, are they?
No, they're not. Well, the tube is. And you can walk up to it, and it'll have on the bottom a serial number and a date that it was made. So those are all authentic. So like 1862 serial number such and such. But the carriage is repro.
Where were they made?
It depends. A lot of them were made at Trigger Ironworks in Richmond.
They would have had wooden wheels, wouldn't
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I noticed when I looked in at that, the fellies and spokes, hubs, all
Yeah.
was metal. I guess we just would have got them sitting out here, they
Yeah.
would last longer.
Yes. Yeah. Well, initially when they would come back after the war was over and start to mark the place, they had the wooden carriages, but because of the elements, they're not going to last. So then the War Department put up the metal case.